All right, thank you again for joining us today. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our first question. First, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Laura Guerrero. I'm a professor at the Hugh Downs School of Human Communication at Arizona State University.
What drew you to want to study and get a PhD in the field of communication?
You know, it was almost an accident how I got started in the field. As an undergraduate, I started out as a marketing major, and then I took a few general education courses in communication. And I found myself, whenever I had the opportunity to take a communication class for a general education requirement, I found myself taking it. So then I ended up double majoring because it didn't cost me any more units to do that. And then I actually was about to go off to law school, and I had a personal reason I needed to defer that for a semester. And one of my comm professors said, we have a spot in our graduate program. You could do a late apply. You'd probably get in. You could teach for a semester, do research, see how you like it. I thought, well, I have nothing to lose, right? So I tried that and I completely fell in love with it. I thought, why go to law school if I've already found out what I really enjoy to do? So I loved both the teaching, being in the classroom with students, and I also really loved the research aspect of it.
Is there anything in particular that you could tell us about your current research, especially with what makes certain relationships healthy and unhealthy? Any advice to students?
Well, I'm a big believer in the conflict literature, that Gottman's research, and I have done some research recently to follow up on that. For example, in one of the studies I did, we found that when people roll their eyes or sigh during conflict in the laboratory, that really sets off the other person. So those nonverbal cues and how they function. We also know that lots of times people misread each other's nonverbal cues. So that's another area. A lot of times somebody has a neutral face and the other person's expecting them to smile, and they see that as negative when the other person didn't intend it to be. So I think a lot of advice that way. I think another piece of advice is to understand that your perception of what the perfect relationship is might not match your partner's, and that how you perceive things to be also based on your social group might not be how other social groups perceive it to be. So trying to think of things from multiple perspectives within the context of your relationships.
What was it about the research topic that particularly interested you? You were saying that you were looking at inside relationships, and before that, nonverbal and emotions. What was it that brought your interest toward that?
I think just understanding how important communication is in the development of our relationships, when we break up, and when you look at the times when people feel the greatest joy and the greatest sorrow and hurt, a lot of them revolve around relationship events. And I think that communication is part of that. So I became really fascinated, just looking at, as a graduate student, at my friends. I remember, I became interested in jealousy because I wondered, why do some people get so jealous and they start to creep on the other person and restrict them, and other people, it doesn't bother them. So I started to get really interested in that. Non-verbally, one of the things that got me started in nonverbal communication was a paper I did in a graduate class. And it was a really simple idea. So one of the things I noticed was that in some studies, men were the initiators of touch more, and in other studies, women were. And it seemed really inconsistent. So I was trying to figure out why this was the case. And I came up with a hypothesis that it might have to do with relationship stage. So that in the initial stages of a relationship, I thought within US Western culture, men are socialized to be the ones to initiate, to put their arm around the woman, to touch the woman, and so forth. But then once the relationship got going, the woman is more the person who's supposed to maintain the relationship. And so I tested that, and then you start to see these things once you start to read the literature. So I'd find myself at the zoo or Disneyland, and I'd see a couple holding hands, and I think, oh, they're probably in the middle stages of their relationship. So I think, that really for me was part of it. It's also applicable, and you can see it in your daily life, and you can notice I did this wrong during a conflict, or you can say, gosh, looking at my partner's reaction to this. It didn't go over how I thought, so I better adjust. And all of this has to do with communication. And yet it can, I think, give you healthier relationships and a healthier perspective on life as well.
Is there any particular topic that you enjoy discussing in the classroom?
Well, I'm lucky because in most of my classes, I wrote the book for the class. So it's kind of like I got to pick everything I discuss. So I'm kind of lucky that way. I think for me right now, the chapters that seem to resonate the most with my undergraduates are the chapter on breakups, which is the last chapter in Close Encounters. I think, with all the ghosting that people do now, talking to students about how to break up in a direct way, but also be compassionate during the breakup is a message that a lot of them want to hear. And then they also like to vent about things like being ghosted on. My chapter that was recently revised in the book that looks at the hookup culture. A lot of students have told me in evaluations or in my office that really spoke to them, that it made them feel like they're not alone in some of their thinking. So there's all these perceptions about the hookup culture and what it is, and hearing the stereotypes that are part of that, and hearing the frustration that students have to deal with that. A lot of them really have told me that resonates with them a lot. So that's a fun chapter to do with the students. And then I think the love and attachment chapter, because there's a lot of popular press on things like love languages right now. And students always, they want to know, what attachment style do I have? What attachment style does my partner have? What love style do I have? And what's really interesting about that, I think, is that students enjoy that because they do see people who fit into it. So when I describe the different styles, you see them nodding, and I'll ask them, do you know people? And they'll all put up their hands and they give lots of examples. So for me, those are the topics right now that seem to be resonating the most when I'm teaching my undergraduates, but that changes depending on, I think the generation and just what's on people's minds in a particular class.
Talking about undergraduate students, those that do major in communication studies and human communication, what career paths do you see them pursue after graduation?
I think this is one of the things that communication should really be celebrating, is that when you look at the social sciences and see how they rank in terms of the skills that employers are looking for, and when you compare them to the other social sciences, communication is usually the one that's mentioned the most in job ads. When you look at the skills that employers are looking for, the soft skills in terms of interpersonal skills, critical thinking, written and speaking skills. So it's a major that's mentioned in a lot of job ads. I also think one of the kind of best features about a communication degree is that there's so many different roads you can take with it. So I look at what my undergraduate students are doing. And at ASU, we have comm and we have business comm, and I consider them to kind of be all our students because they all take like my conflict class and other classes that I teach. But you find that they have such a variety of jobs. So one of the top ones I think is management, sales, event planning, user experience research. A lot of them that have taken quantitative and qualitative methods are a really great fit there as well, which is kind of an up and coming area. I even have a graduate student who's looking into doing that. So those are some of the key areas. We have people who have done things like worked for the Phoenix Suns in their promotion department. So it's so many different things. And then we have some who go on to law school or go on and get an MBA. And it's, to me, one of the best degrees because of that. You don't have to decide at 18 or 19 what you want to do for the rest of your life if you have a comm degree. Now, I think one of the great things too about a comm degree is you can supplement it with a minor and kind of get a nice profile of those soft and hard skills, because comm, with the research that you learn in comm, that's a very valuable hard skill. You have all these soft skills related to communication, relating to others, and then having a minor to add, a few more hard skills to that profile can really make you very marketable. But yeah, those are some of the jobs. And like I said, the flexibility that you have with the communication degree. And especially if you don't want to do a STEM or business degree, it's kind of, I think, right there as the degree that's mentioned a lot in job ads.